podcast. This is our first episode on YouTube. So this is episode 170, and we've done 170 episodes audio only, and now we're on YouTube. So now you can see us when I'm talking with Tim, and then you can see me with my guests in the future. So you're going to be able to see all of it. So if you ever want to, if you're an audio person and you want to go see who are those people, what do they look like, go to YouTube.
What's
or maybe
their deal?
Yeah. Or maybe you just want to watch on YouTube.
Maybe not. Anyway.
I'm a YouTube listener of podcasts, but I do go to YouTube when I want to see someone or I want to see something they're talking about, or I'll go back and replay because I want to see their affectation or their expression. I go back, then I get on YouTube and I'll watch it on there. So welcome to all of you new YouTube people. We're happy to have you here.
Let's give it a go. See what happens.
Okay. So episode 170, and we are talking about how to ask for forgiveness. So I've been doing the friendship series the last several episodes, and a big part of friendship is knowing how to accept an apology, but knowing how to ask for an apology, knowing how to say you're sorry. That's a huge part of having successful relationships in life. And it's a big part of personal development coaching, is knowing when to eat humble pie, to swallow your pride, and to know that, you know what, you're not always right. I'm not always right. And that we mess up. And there are times when, if you really want to have deep and long-term friendships, there are times you're going to have to suck it up and say you're sorry.
And it's not easy.
It's not easy to
right?
do.
That's a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
So good.
I have a list here. I'm taking my notes ahead of time, so you all are going to see me here. This is what I do every week. My readers. I take notes before these episodes because I usually give you all a list, and I can't memorize a list. There's just no way. So let's just start with number one. So when you are going to ask somebody for forgiveness for something you did, said, something that happened, I really want you to spend time reflecting. Okay. So before you apologize, take some time to think about what happened. Understand why your actions or why your words were hurtful or wrong. This is going to help you articulate the apology a little bit more sincerely. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. So we've all done this, right? Where we've done something we shouldn't have done. And then we have to go ask for forgiveness because we feel bad and, whatever. So, but in your mind, I know there's moments where you're like, how can I make this where I'm less wrong? Right? Yeah. Like as you're contemplating, like, okay, I'm going to have to go and put my shoulders down and I'm going to have to do all of the things that I'm supposed to do. Right. But I don't want to make it like I'm not as wrong as maybe someone else thinks I am.
Yeah. Talk about personal experience.
Right. Maybe.
Totally. Yes.
So do you have to kind of talk yourself?
I'm 80% wrong. I'm not 100. You're 20% wrong.
Right. Yeah. And it's like in your mind, if it's me, I would be focusing on the 20%, trying to make that as big or as significant as the 80. When in the reality of it is, it's more like 95.5, or maybe even more than that. Right? Yeah. That's tough. That's tough to do.
It is.
That is tough to do.
So that's why I think it's important to spend some time thinking about, what happened, and what's your part in it. It doesn't matter really, because what you're talking about, Tim, is keeping score.
Yeah.
So I don't keep score, and you really do feel bad about something. Let's say you said something to someone. You feel badly about saying something to someone that's staying with you. It's bothering you in your conscience. Pay attention to that. So, that's, your inner, your subconscious tapping you on the shoulder going, you know what, there's something here. You are accountable for this. You are responsible for this. This is your part. Think about it and get ready for an apology.
Yeah.
To apologize. Okay.
And so the advice really is to let that rest of it, even though you feel like you need to justify what you did, let that go.
Let it go.
Don't focus on that whatsoever.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay. So number one, spend time reflecting about what it is that happened. Go through the situation in your mind. And number two, choose the time and place when you're going to apologize to this person. Okay. Make sure you're in a private setting where both of you feel comfortable. It's a pretty neutral place. Maybe it's in a restaurant. It's at a park, on a park bench. It's at a coffee shop. I wouldn't go to each other's places because sometimes that doesn't feel like neutral territory. You could even do it. You could do it over the phone, not texting. Don't text apology. I'm not talking about texting or even audio text. I think this is a face-to-face, preferably a face-to-face conversation. If you can't have it face-to-face, then do it over the phone. Okay. That is okay. Not texting. And make sure you give yourself time to talk through the conversation so that you're not being interrupted. So, if you've got little kids, ask that person for coffee, go out to coffee and sit. You're going to give the apology, right? But it's uninterrupted because your kids aren't there and their kids aren't there. Okay. So you get my drift. So really choose that time and place. Be thoughtful about that. When you go to apologize, and this is number 3, express remorse. Start your apology by clearly stating that you are sorry. Be sincere and be direct. Avoid any phrases that might dilute the apology, such as, and this is a big one, don't do this. I'm sorry if you felt hurt. That's not an apology. That's not an apology. Don't say to somebody, I'm sorry that you were hurt. I'm sorry that you got mad. You're not apologizing. And you're actually not completely owning it. You're putting it on them. And that is going to make them mad because we pick up right away when somebody's not giving us a heartfelt apology and not. What we want is you to own it. We want you to own it completely. Your part in it. But don't do that, okay? That's going to make it go south quickly.
That's a big one. I mean, because there's ways, like, the other thing you don't want to say is like, I'm sorry I made you feel, I made you feel bad, right? Like, well, first of all, I can't make you feel
anything,
good or bad, but you're not owning a darn thing when you say that. You're
right.
just saying that, I'm sorry that you were pushed to the point where you feel bad now.
Right.
Right? That's tough. Don't say that.
That's annoying.
Yeah.
And anybody that you do that to is going to be annoyed by you. And those who are listening and watching, you probably have been there before. You've either done it yourself or you've been on the recipient of it, or you've seen somebody else do it to another person.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is acknowledge what you did wrong. All right. So backing up on what I just said not to do, clearly explain what you did wrong and why it was hurtful to the person. This shows that you have put thought into their feelings and you understand the impact of your actions. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. This shows that you have put thought into their feelings. You've expressed empathy. You put yourself in their shoes, and you really do understand the impact of your actions on them. It's the opposite of what I just said about, I'm sorry that you felt mad. Don't do that. And you're really just putting your heart out there saying, I'm really sorry. And I see that it hurt you, and I saw how you reacted and I am sorry. Okay. So many times we say, I'm sorry, it completely takes like the helium out of the balloon for the other person. It takes the negative energy out, and I know when I've said sorry to people, I actually see people's shoulders come down because they're like, oh, she's totally owning it. Okay. Well, we don't need to fight anymore. Like I see them become like, whether it be my daughters or like my sister, like I see people just go, oh, okay. That's all I really wanted. She said she's sorry.
Yeah, because the other thing, think
So
about
healing.
The other person, the one that you're apologizing to, that person, I mean, you don't know how they're coming into this either. They could be coming in red hot,
Still
right?
hot.
Like thinking this is not
Dukes
over.
Up, ready
Yeah.
Getting defensive, okay, what's this going to be about? What are they going to say?
And their wheels are like spinning with like, okay, let me just load my gun with
Right.
this, and this, because this is how I'm going to come back.
I hate the gun reference, but yeah.
Well, not the gun reference, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're loading up
Right.
their brain with like all of these like firing things that they're going to come back after you with potentially,
And I know that this can be hard for many of you to apologize. And at the same time, what I want you to do next is I want you to really kind of sit in taking responsibility for your actions, taking responsibility for your behavior, for what you said. Okay. So avoid making excuses for your behavior. So you're apologizing. don't make excuses. All right. That's going to fall flat with the person who's listening. Own up to your actions and any mistakes you made. Like I just said, and it shows sincerity on your part. It also shows maturity. It shows a higher level of emotional intelligence, and it shows that you're a mature person. Okay. When we get defensive and angry, we want to fight back. That's emotional immaturity. And if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching it on YouTube, you're here because you are interested in emotional intelligence. You're obviously interested in personal development and you want to advance yourself. And that's exactly what this is about, because asking for forgiveness for us is a really hard thing to do. Like I said in the beginning, of this episode, it's swallowing our pride. It's admitting that we are not always right, even when we get into a fight with someone, because it's really, and this is an absolute statement, saying never. And this is one of the few times I can confidently say this. It's never 100% one person's fault. There's probably something the other person did. There's probably something they said that led up to what you said that was hurtful, that you're now apologizing for, and you go over it in your mind. Like, well, they said this. If they didn't say that, then I wouldn't have said this. And, they're always this way and they always do this. And I just finally have had it. And I said what I said, but, but this, but that. Don't do that. Okay. Own your stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
That goes back to that 80% thing,
like
where
just
you're
said.
just like leaning on
Right.
the little bit of hope that you think you have and you actually don't.
Right.
So
the next one is explain your apology, but don't make excuses. Okay. So these are all just running into each other. If it's relevant and the person is open to hearing it that you're apologizing to, you could explain your perspective and what led to that situation, but really be careful with that. Like based on what I just said, really be careful. Don't move into a place of back against the wall and now you're defensive. Okay. You can explain your perspective if it's relevant and they're willing to listen, what led to the situation, but really be careful not to use it as an excuse for what you said or you did. Okay. The focus really needs to be on acknowledging the hurt that you caused and not justifying your behavior. Okay. Even though inside yourself, you may feel like you got some justification for your behavior, do not start from there or even be there in the middle. Like, don't try to justify your behavior.
Yeah. And that one's
Does that make sense?
It does.
Explain it, but try not to justify it.
Yeah.
If they're willing to hear like the backstory. I mean, you could say something like, I just had it's not an excuse. I've done this before with you. Like, not an excuse, but I was having a shit day. I was having a terrible day. I got a flat tire or stupid crack in the windshield and so totally blew me off. Or, I said something dumb at this meeting and I'm all up in my head about it. And I was in a bad mood when I walked into the house and that's what led up to it. And you may be like, all right, well, okay, I get it. I get why you were in a bad mood that day. But thank you for saying you're sorry, because what you said to me was really rude.
Yeah.
And like mean as shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you got to be really careful, because that is a slippery slope. When you start to bring in all these other things that have happened to you, if you're that person, and you bring, because that has nothing to do with the other person whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like times at work where you bring somebody in and you have to have a sit down and you have to talk about something that went wrong. And then the person goes off on some wild story about, this and this and this. And you're like, you know what? That's all. Unfortunately, all that happened, right, for you. And none of that actually has anything to do with what we're talking about.
So they're making excuses. So there's excuses and there's reasons. I've talked about this on the podcast before.
Yeah.
There's excuses and there's reasons. So I'm telling you, I'm giving you a reason for why I showed up at the house in a bad mood. But I'm not trying to make excuses. I still am sorry for what I said, because what I said was wrong. It was bad of me. It was low of me. It was like a not good side of myself showed up. I'm not making an excuse. I am sorry and I fully own it. I'm just giving you a reason. But I'm not trying to take away from my full responsibility of that I am sorry.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what kind of day I'm having. I ought not to have said that to you.
Sure.
And that's mean.
Yeah.
I think with work, not intimate relationships with family members or friends or spouses, partners, good friends. I think with work, that is something you may hear quite a bit at work. Those who are listening, I know you've heard it. I think part of you is also like, I know I've had this before. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, it works different.
Has
I think
no impact on what we're speaking of.
yeah, it's like, what
Yeah.
I remember I had an intern many, many years ago who, oh my gosh, she kept having to leave. Like, it was way, way back. I mean, this is like 30 years ago, and I worked in neonatal intensive care unit. So I was in NICU, the peds ICU, and I worked in antepartum unit. So this is these are the pregnant preterm labor moms. So they were obviously in high risk pregnancies, and they were being hospitalized. So because we needed to hospitalize them to keep the baby in, many of them were trying to get there like 22, 24, 26 weeks. And it wasn't enough for them to be at home on bed rest. We needed to have them in the hospital. This is like 25, 30 years ago. And we would admit them. And there was a unit. And that was a really, really hard unit. And my heart always went out to those patients, because can you imagine being on bed rest 24/7 in a hospital, many times alone? So I was in there quite a bit visiting with these patients. And I will never forget. I mean, many of them, they would take the hospital bed and they would tilt it so the legs were up for gravity, to even help even further. And I don't know if they do this today, to help keep the baby in. And they would give them a cerclage, or they stitch the cervix up, and then they would put them at an angle. And so these poor women, my gosh, my heart went out to them. I felt there was a form of torture. And I had an intern with me, and she had done it before. And then I brought her in, this patient I knew really well, and I had a really great connection. It was counseling with her. And I brought her with me. And in the middle of this conversation of this patient, was like tearful and crying and talking about her stress and babies at home and a husband to work. And here she's in the hospital. And the intern was like, excuse me, I need to leave right now. I need to leave. She said something like, I have to go have lunch. I could not believe that she did that.
Oops.
And I was like, okay. And she left, and I was steaming. I was so mad at her. And I went and talked to my boss, and she's a good, I liked her. I mean, but she was weird about lunchtime, because oftentimes if I had a session that was around noon, they would run over. I wasn't going to stop because it was 12 and I'd go off lunch. I mean, the session ended when the session ended, and you got your lunch and whatever you did. And she was pretty rigid about that. And I went and talked to my boss, and my boss was like, well, you got to go talk to her. And so I did, and she gave excuses. And I realized that there were some mental health eating disorder issues going on. And so I had compassion for her around that. But I also said to her that basically this is an excuse. I mean, you have a reason, but you're also giving me excuses for why you've been doing this. So we changed her schedule around so that.
So she did this often? Like,
she did it more. This was like the third time she'd done it.
Wow.
And I tolerated it, but I'd never been in that intense of a situation with the patient, especially on that unit. I hadn't brought her there yet, where you don't leave when a patient's crying and she's going through a whole lot right now, and you just up and say, I gotta go. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And she gave some excuses. She got defensive, and she gave excuses because she probably couldn't believe that her supervisor was confronting her on a behavior. It was hard to hear. It's hard to hear. And she made excuses, and I, in a nice way, said to her, you're making excuses, and there's no excuse for that. So she didn't totally own it. And then she did. I mean, she did. I don't remember anything after that. Like, I liked her personally, but you just cannot do that. And she was in graduate school. She's an intern in graduate school. She's being trained to be a therapist. You can't. So that was an important.
It's good to learn that early.
Yeah. But I digress, which we will often do here on the podcast.
It happens.
But this is a good story in that, you know when you're listening to someone, if they're giving you a reason, and all of you know who are watching and listening, when people are giving you excuses. You just know it. You like feel it in your gut. Like, okay, let's to your point, Tim.
Yeah.
Like, people at work do it, and you're like, okay, kind of don't care. Just make sure you're here at 8:30, for example. Just make sure you're at 8:30.
Yeah.
Then you need to leave at 7:30 if you want to get here on time.
Start
but I don't
your
want to
morning
hear
a little bit earlier. You'll be fine. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. So explain don't excuse yourself. Don't make excuses for your own behavior when you're the one asking for the apology. And then number 7 is make amends. Okay. Offer to make things right with that person. Ask what you can do to repair the damage that you have done or how you can improve the situation. Be willing to take concrete steps to address the issue. Now, I want you all to think about this ahead of time. Before you go to that apology with that person, I want you to think, what can I do to make it right? And I want you to think, to ask that person that you're apologizing to, say that. What can I do to make this right? How can I make amends? Most times they won't tell you anything. They may just, like I said earlier, they may just be so happy and maybe impressed and satisfied with the fact that you're owning it and you're saying you're sorry. I would say 80%, 90%. Some of the time you may have someone and you're saying, what can I do to make it right? Sometimes they may say, this is what you can do to make it right. You can go and apologize to my kid. You could just never do that again. Please just don't ever call me out like that in front of a bunch of people again. That was embarrassing. Okay, I'll never do that again. Sometimes they'll tell you what you can do to make it right for them. I think most times people won't tell you. They're also flooded by the situation because, like, wow, this person's apologizing to me, and they're really in the moment, and they're not able to really think it through. And allow them, listen, if there's anything after we leave this conversation that I can do to make this right and you can't think of anything right now, come back and tell me, and I'll do that. I'm happy to do that. Because many times people they can't think on their feet and they don't know what you can do, but give them 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. They may come back to you and say, hey, thank you for saying you're sorry yesterday. You said you were sorry. Here's something that you could do.
Yeah.
Can you just please watch your sarcasm? We're all out to lunch. Maybe work on that. Okay. So that's advanced level. That's taking it to the next level, which if you can do it, do it. Ask for, what can I do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a couple examples of that it just came to mind now. So, I mean, I've asked before, like in situations like that, but sometimes it depends. If you haven't gone through this exercise where you've taken a moment of pause or slept on it or let everything kind of cool off and then go back for the apology, instead you're trying to do it in real time. So you're like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. It's our mistake, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, how can I make it right? Like, you got to be really careful and you have to be really good with what that person's going to say next. Because in real time, like in the moment, they might come up with some wild question for you to do. You know what I mean? They might just ask for the moon, and you got to be ready to think quickly.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, how you got to be like ready to respond to that. Versus what you're saying is, if you take a moment, you sleep on it, you come
But you
back.
don't have to give an answer in the moment. They ask, if you say, what can I do to make it right? And they give you an answer. They come back with an answer. You could say, let me think on that.
Totally. Yeah.
Come back with a nod, a yes, and.
We can consider that, and I'll get back with you.
Yeah. So this is Second City Improv.
There you go.
Where I'm taking classes in Chicago. I love it because it's the whole philosophy from the founder of Second City in Chicago. It's yes and. So even if you don't like, oh, that's a tall order. It's a yes and approach.
Yeah.
Yes and. You maybe don't say yes and, but you nod. Okay, let me think on that. Let me think about how I can. I can do that. But you want to come back with making them feel like they've been heard.
Right.
That's what's important.
That's the key.
Right.
Yeah, you got to give them a moment of where you're the audience of them.
Yes.
For sure.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the next one that we're running into is commit to change. So this is my next step. Show that you're committed to not repeating the same mistake with them. Explain the steps that you're going to take to change your behavior and avoid similar situations in the future. Like I had back when I had Samantha, my first daughter. She's now 29, so this will tell you how long ago this was. And I had an au pair because I just had her. I still work full time. Actually, I was working at that hospital in maternal and child health, and I had an au pair, and she. This is. I think about this, and it's weird to me to think about, but because I was like her older sister, so my au pair was 19 years old from Germany. I was 26. I was 26 years old when I had my first kid and went back to work full time. And the 7 years distance, there's 7 years of me and my older sister, Carla. I mean, we're only 7 years apart.
Yeah.
So she was like my shadow. We were always together. I liked her very much. She liked us very much, me and my first husband. And we hung out all the time. And she really was like, she was a great childcare provider for Samantha. And I liked her very much. But I think we got really, really very comfortable with each other. I think she got very comfortable with myself. And I think there were times that she'd forget that I was technically I was her employer, not her sister, not her aunt, not her friend.
Yeah.
And I remember she would make some snide comments to me about like little things like, oh, you're so lazy, like you're being lazy. Because I would, when I'd get up for work in the morning, if I got 10 or 15 minutes with my daughter before I had to leave for my commute to the city, I wanted to get her out of the crib and I wanted to just be with her, but I wouldn't always change the diaper. I'd wait. I'm like, well, I'm going to hold her and I'm going to hang out with her, unless it was like a poopy diaper. But the diapers in the morning are full of your pee. Most time, like 95% of the time, it's pee. They don't poo in the middle of the night usually. But I wouldn't change that diaper because I was leaving in 10 or 15 minutes. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be with her, maybe read her a book or sit on the ground with her. And I remember that really made her mad because I had to leave. And I'm like, all right, I'm leaving. Here's the baby. And she's like, oh,
here's the baby and here's the
diaper that you need to change.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, what's your job?
Yeah.
And I don't want to do it. I want to spend my time with her. Whatever.
Yeah.
She didn't like that. And she made a comment, but she'd made several comments like that. And it was really bugging me. And I'll never forget, we had like a family meeting, myself with my husband at the time and her. And I'll never forget, she said, okay, like, thank you for that. I mean, I knew there was a power differential because it was me and my husband talking to her. So there's an imbalance of power, but we're her employers. And I said, this is what it is. It's bothering me. It's kind of hurting my feelings. I don't like, I am your boss. I don't like you saying those things. And I set the boundary and she said, I'm sorry. And I will never do that again. And and she was German and she was very direct like that. And I loved the apology. And I love that she said she'd never do it again because she was resolute in it and she never did it again.
Interesting.
And it was great. I mean, our relationship, that was the only thing we had. I mean, she was with us for a year. It was the only thing we ever had. And we never had anything again. And we just went back to our regular, great, close, laughing, fun relationship. But that stands out to me. I'm sorry. And I will never do it again. And let me tell you, she didn't do it again.
Yeah.
So she realized, like, I may not like it, but she's the mom and she wants to spend time with the baby. She doesn't want to change a diaper.
Yeah.
It's my job. I'm the nanny. I got to change the diaper.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've heard that too, where you've said that we've said that to somebody, that we're sorry, and then they own it. And then we say, we'll ask the question and they'll come back and then we'll say, you know what, we'll own what we did wrong. And we'll thank them for bringing whatever it is to our attention so that we can take the corrective steps to improve the process of whatever it might be going forward,
I mean, I did a whole podcast episode on it. Was it almost 2 years ago? I don't remember what episode it was. The episode we did on blind spots, on doing blind spot work. Yeah. And that was interesting. We're talking about Samantha when she was 1. Now we're talking about Samantha when she was 20. She's 29 now. She was 27. And she had a, confrontational talk with me when we were on a hike a couple of years ago about things about me that were bugging her, about like talking too much with her friends. I don't know. She was like upset about something with me and it was hard to hear. And I said to her, let me tell you, I mean, somebody has a blind spot conversation with you about what about you is bothering them or hurting them or annoying them. You never forget those conversations. And I had to take a deep breath because you can feel defensive. It can be hard to hear. But I heard it. I knew because I've been doing this work on my own in coaching as a person being coached. And I was doing this work and I took a deep breath. I listened to it and I'm like, and I remember being like, oh, geez, what did I do wrong? Oh, she's going to confront me. Oh, I remember like saying that. What did I do wrong?
And she did.
And she told me. But let me tell you, I will never forget that conversation. And I said to her, thank you for telling me. Now I'm going to be totally mindful of that in these social situations, and I will never do that again. And that was 2 years ago, and I actually don't think I have ever done it since, and I won't do it again. I will be very mindful of that when we are around like her groups of friends, not to be like I don't know, she got annoyed with me because she's like, you were talking too much and you were like, you get the attention and I don't like it. And it was just like, okay, I mean, it's not up to me to psychoanalyze her and, well, you're being this way, you're being that way. It doesn't matter. My daughter felt this way. I need to stop it and don't do it again.
Yeah.
And I would say if she was sitting here right now, she'd probably be like, yeah, I don't think I have done it again because I'm really aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just took that moment for somebody to bring it to your attention, right?
Hard to hear.
Yeah.
Hard to hear. But let me tell you, I mean, it's
we've all had moments like that,
it.
right? Where somebody brings something to our attention and we're like, ooh, like it gives us a little.
Why bring it to your attention?
Well, I know that's true. But like we'll have a cringy moment where we're like, oh, that's how I am perceived. My actions perceived as that, or you know what I mean?
I can't think of anything. You and me together, or just you?
No, I'm just thinking in general. Just like if somebody brings something to your attention and you haven't seen it, like I haven't seen it before, or I haven't recognized that someone else saw whatever in me.
And so you're cringing
at my own self. Yeah. And I'm like,
I think we've done that. I mean,
yeah.
I've cringed like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. So cringy.
Yeah.
So cringy. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure every single one of us has had moments in our lives. You've lived long enough.
Right.
You've had moments where you're cringy, but hopefully about yourself, but hopefully you're able to get to the point where you can own that, yeah, it was cringy. I behaved badly or I behaved embarrassingly, and we can learn to
I can make that better
and make it better and grow from it.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, every single one of us has behaved badly. Every single person that's an adult could look back and say, yeah, not my best moment. Not a good time. Not a good time. Definitely. That was a low place in my life. I was in an angry phase. I was in a mad phase. I was depressed and only thinking about me, whatever it might be.
Right.
You know, I was in a phase of it being all me all the time. Oftentimes you don't see that until you move out of it, whether somebody confront you on it, tell you about it, life just threw you a massive hard knock and you got like punched in the face, which I know I have, figuratively speaking. And you look back and yeah, I was not my best self. And we've all been there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why this conversation is so important, because we are very much into how we want people to apologize to us, and we want apologies. And I am gonna do. We're gonna talk about that as well. You know, when we want to receive an apology from someone, we're seeking it, we're looking for it, even if we don't want to forgive them, we still want the apology. But also at the same time, it's important in our own personal development that we acknowledge that we do shitty things to people too. And that there are times when we need to apologize for our behaviors, for what we did and what we didn't do. You know, what we said and what we didn't say.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It happens all the time.
There are times that we needed to speak up. There's times that we needed to have someone's back. We needed to, be in their corner, and we knew it and we didn't do it. And that person deserves an apology.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Let's see. The next one is after you've apologized and you've maybe made amends to them, you're going to be asking for forgiveness, but I want you to remember that the other person is not obligated to forgive you. So I talked about this. I did a reel on this about a year ago, 2 years ago. I talked about this. These are important topics. That's why they're on repeat. You could apologize and make amends, but you got to remember, just because you said you were sorry and it was a big deal for you to say you're sorry and you made amends, they are not obligated to forgive you. So don't get mad again if they don't forgive you. Respect their feelings.
That's a tough one, because like if you're
respect their feelings and give them time because they need it.
Yeah.
So, I know I had something happen to me where somebody apologized to me, and I said to that person, and I thought to myself, thank you for the apology. I'm not ready to forgive. And the reel that I had done it was on social media, was that you don't have to forgive someone to heal and move on. You can still heal from a terrible thing that happened if you're really hurt by it without forgiving them. And that's really anathema to what many of us have been taught growing up, is that you need to forgive, you need to forgive. It's very much a Judeo-Christian philosophical belief about forgiveness, especially Christian.
And move, or forgive and forget.
Forgive and forget, but forgive and move on.
Sort of forget.
But you need to forgive the person. And I have flipped that, and coming from a Christian Catholic background, you can heal yourself, and it doesn't mean you have forgiven them. forgiveness takes a long time for people, depending on what the situation is. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that like, if you're saying you're sorry to someone and they're like, well, thank you for the apology. I'm not there yet.
And you're like,
I'm not, then you need to accept it. And that's
yeah.
on you. And
Yeah.
that's your stuff. That's your work that you do with your therapist, with your coach. You've done feel liberated, feel free, feel energized that I did this. It was a really big deal. I said I was sorry to that person, but you need to know that they may not accept the apology, and that's okay. Let them be. Let them be. You're still working it through.
Yeah. Can you think of a time? I'm trying to think if I can, and I can't right the second, but a time where that's exactly what happened, and either you were on one end of this or the other, but then at some point somebody came back and said, "Okay, I can forgive you." Like I had to think. Maybe it was a day, maybe it was a year, maybe it was 10 years, but like, can you? I mean, I can't.
No, I haven't had that
Yeah.
because I think what happens is you apologize, especially with friendships. I think sometimes so much damage is done. The person's like, well, I'm not going to come back to you. And it just ends. It fizzles out. And that's what I think happens is I think that most people don't get the opportunity. We can say we're sorry and we want to make amends, but the person is so hurt, they're not willing to forgive you. And what happens is you stop texting. You said, I said I was sorry and I really meant it. And I'm going to, they need time and space. So I'm going to let them reach out to me, text me, call me. Usually it's texting and they don't. And then what you see is this relationship is ending.
Yeah.
I've said I was sorry. They've accepted it or they haven't. They need more time. But what I notice is that she doesn't text me in a month. Now it's 3 months. And okay, I guess we're just, and that and to learn that's radical acceptance. So accept that person has the right to decide if they want to have a friendship with you or not, just like you do as well.
Sure.
So you did your part, good on you. And the acceptance is that we may not be friends.
Yeah.
Because they can accept your apology and they don't want to be your friend anymore.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, I think it's different with family members. I mean,
that would be tough if it was a family member.
Well, I had a stupid but big fight with my sister last July in New York, in Manhattan. Oh my gosh, it was like a Real Housewives moment with two of my sisters, and we made such a scene in this restaurant. The waitress twice came up to our table and then like turned and like she came up to take our order, hi, and she's like, okay, and she like walked away twice because my sister and I were in such a massive fight, yelling at each other. So embarrassing. It's a crowded restaurant. People are staring at us. Ugh. And I just wouldn't back down from her. I was fighting with her, arguing with her. My other sister was kind of in it, and then she got out of it. And I apologized right away. I immediately felt sorry. And I apologized, but the damage was done. Like, she was hurt. And I said some things to her, aggressively said some things to her, and she was hurt. And I knew that we had like 5 days together. We just starting our long weekend, our sisters.
This was night one.
Night one.
Oh boy.
I told you about this.
Yeah.
In Manhattan. And then we were there for the next day and then going up north to the upstate New York to visit our brother. And we got through it. There was some tension that night. The night was kind of ruined. I ruined the night. I did. I own it. I ruined it. The next morning was weird. I mean, we got past it. We had just, we're going to be together and we wanted to have a good time. And she went for a run by herself. I went for a walk with my other sister. And it was good because my other sister's like, why do you get that way? It's totally family of origin issues. Totally old stuff that at our age still comes up because I'm one of 8 kids. And it doesn't matter. I think it doesn't matter if you're one of 2 kids or one of 15. It's old family of origin stuff that came up. Something about the way she spoke to me triggered me because she's so many years older than me. And it made me feel like I was 9 years old again. Didn't have a voice, didn't get to say. It doesn't matter. She's got her thoughts about it as well. And here I am going, this is crazy. I mean, we're middle-aged women. And I was like, I stood up to her. And it was stupid and silly. And she needed the morning to go for a run in Central Park. Maria and I went for a walk. And it was good because Maria confronted me. I mean, it was great because she didn't listen and she wasn't like, like Carl is wrong and you're right. She's like, no, why did you do that? And why do you get this way, Anna? She's like, why do you get this way around family? I'm like, oh God, I've got more work to do. Back to therapy. Because you think you've resolved something and something like that happens. And it's like, okay, I got more work to do here.
Yeah.
And it was, okay. So all that to say, the rest of the weekend went well. It was fine. We enjoyed our time together. My other sister came, and so there are 5 of us up there. It was good. It was a good weekend. But I got home back to Chicago, and it bothered me because I knew that I needed to give her a proper apology, not just an apology in a restaurant after you yelled at her. We yelled at each other. I needed to apologize again. And so I called her up, and we'd been home like 2 or 3 weeks. And this was on the phone because she lives in DC and I'm in Chicago. I called her up, hey, how are you? It was fine. Like, hey, what's up? And I said, listen, I just want to really apologize. I almost started crying because it was just really me being really vulnerable and exposing myself. And I said, that wasn't good enough. Like, I am really sorry for what I said to you. I'm sorry that whole thing even happened. It's so stupid and silly, the whole thing. And I broke it down about what I was sorry for. And she said to me, thank you for that. Thank you. She said, thank you for apologizing again. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for owning it. Like I knew that she was appreciative. And I also knew that what I had done 3 weeks earlier was not sufficient enough. Not for that relationship. I'm really close. And I love her and care about her and respect her. And we get along so well. We travel, like we just get along so well. That was stupid and silly. And I really stuck a knife in the relationship that night. And so, I knew that when I called her, that she could say to me, thank you for this. And I'm still wrestling with what happened. I'm still wrestling with it.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to fully maybe forgive you. Thank you for this. And then I would know to myself that I had done what I needed to do, but that she has every right to have her feelings and to have them be where they are, where they are. So that didn't happen. She said, thank you so much. And it's over. It's over. Let's move on now. And we said we love each other. And that was it. But it could have gone another direction. And I knew that before I called her.
So was there ever any other discussion on this?
No, it really was resolution.
That was that. So
that was that.
Okay, interesting.
And it's like it never happened. Or I mean, I've seen her, of course, since then. We stayed with her at Christmas. No, things are
but
great.
But she didn't feel the need to have to come back to you and ask a question. She did say,
she goes, I don't know what some of this is about. She said, some of this I think is about you and your childhood and your childhood and our family. She said something like that. Like, I don't know what that's about for you. Like your vehemence with the way you spoke to me. She's saying to me, I'm aware that that's not all about me. And she's not wrong. She's right.
There you go.
But that was it. That was it. So when it was over, we ended that conversation. It really was over and done with, and great. And we're just on to our regular normal close relationship. And yeah.
Cool.
So, okay. All right. So follow through, demonstrate your commitment to change your actions and really do it. And what'll happen is if you change your behavior, your actions, and you say you're making amends, even if the person can't forgive you at that moment, well, they're not forgetting. Okay. So you could forgive somebody. We don't forget. We don't forget when things have been done. What we see is that consistency over time shows that your apology really was sincere and that you really are making an effort. So Doreen, my au pair, she never did it again. And I saw consistently over time. I continued to, get my daughter up in the morning if she was awake before I left and, spend time with her. And I didn't change her diaper. And Doreen never acted that way again. Consistently showing up, taking the consistently seeing somebody who's, they're not sarcastic anymore. They don't make those snide, biting, caustic comments anymore. They really have changed. Then you develop trust. And then you're like, no, I have forgiven. I've really forgiven it. And we're moving past it now. Okay. So throw people a bone, realizing that for some people, they're going to need to see over time, you consistently not doing that for them to be able to move on. apologies are not for a lot of people like one and done. You need
True.
to show that you are changing your behavior. Okay.
Well, it's like they say, trust is not given.
It's
earned, right? So and that does take time in certain things.
Right. And this is all following in line. So last but not least, we're prepared for any response from them. Like I just said with my sister, I knew ahead of time she could go in different directions with me, and I needed to be open and vulnerable to that. So vulnerability is really important here. Be prepared for any response. The person, they may forgive you immediately, and they may not. They may need time to process your apology and what you've said, and they may not be ready in that moment. Respect that, respect their feelings, respect their response, whatever it is. Okay? Don't come in with ideas about how it's supposed to go with them or how the situation's supposed to go. You're 50% of a 100% relationship with another person. You're only 50%. Okay. That's really important. But just always remember that you showing up with a genuine apology for people, focusing on the feelings and the experiences of the person that you have hurt is going to go a long way. Okay. Don't guilt them. Don't give a half-ass apology. I'm sorry I hurt you. To recap, just really show up. I'm sorry I did this, and be specific. I'm sorry I said what I did. I'm so sorry. What can I do to make it better? And like, I love you. I care about you. I care about this relationship. That's going to go a really long way. Okay. You're going to rebuild that trust. And like with my sister and I, you'll be able to move forward in the relationship or not. And if it's not, then that's up to you to accept it. And if you need help around that, get help around that. Okay.
Yeah. Learn from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For the next time. So you don't go that direction again.
Because every single one of us probably has someone in our life that we have needed to apologize to. And maybe right now you've got somebody that you need to apologize to for something you said or did. You have hurt someone's feelings. So go through this, listen to this again, and jot down some notes for yourself. Okay. You can do it. You can do it. And I'm telling you, you will have such a feeling of liberation and freedom once you've done it. It's going to be hard. You might be afraid. Swallow your pride. You're not always right. No one's always right. Mea culpa, my bad. I screwed up on this one. When you are done, no matter what the outcome is, you're going to be like, oh, I did it. It's wonderful. You are advancing your personal development.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
All right, everyone. So if you're interested in working with me, if you are interested in coaching, go to the show notes and you can find out how to reach out to me in the show notes. Check me out on my website, annamarcolini.com, if you want to know more about me. And please don't forget to rate, review the podcast, subscribe, share this episode with anyone that you think would find it valuable. Okay. So that's, we love it when people share and let us know what you think. Okay. I read the feedback, I read the reviews, and I really appreciate all the good stuff and constructive criticism. If there's something that you want me to do or to talk about that I haven't talked about, I'm open to that too.
Yeah. I mean, especially now, since this is a video, right? Yeah. This is uncharted territory for both of us. So, like, where this goes, who's to say, right? But we definitely would love to hear feedback on that, certainly.
All right, everyone, mad love, and until next time.